Welcome to the Modern Arizona Podcast. We share the stories of people whose lives are shaped by the legal system in Arizona and beyond. Each episode blends real experiences, expert insights, and practical guidance to give you a deeper understanding of the law and its impact on everyday life.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Arizona Podcast. I'm your host, Billie, today joined by criminologist, expert witness, Susan Magestro. Susan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Billie. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, so we today have quite the topic. We're talking about domestic violence where a child is the main perpetrator of domestic violence within a household, whether it be a divorced household or an intact household. How often does this happen?
You know, as a criminologist and interventionist, and I'd love to explain what that looks like, that is my number one call out.
Yeah.
And it has been for a while.
Well, how did you find yourself in this specific field?
You know, this was not an exact job, position, or description that I aspire to. I didn't plan it out and follow a mold. It created itself, and it has turned into quite an unbelievable career. So my background is working in the areas of crime as an investigator
Mm-hmm.
and as a interventionist, meaning I go into a situation and I don't stay there for an hour or two. I de-escalate for as long as it's going to take to de-escalate it. And sometimes it's hours and sometimes it's days.
Wow.
Just to get it to a calm place. Now, I also have the background that came in with social, emotional challenges,
Mm-hmm.
learning disabilities, and crisis intervention. So I brought this wealth of information along with the investigations, and it took its own life.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean, my focus is young people. It used to be under 21, then 25. Now it's under 28. And my focus is, as you said, children who are the abusers and the parents as victims, which is not typically what we would think of.
Mm-hmm.
Young people who become violent and have plans to commit shootings. Children of incarcerated parents. And social media issues and bullying.
Yeah.
So it just kind of took on a life of its own. And then as I started working, not just with young people and families, but I've worked for 20 years in prisons with inmates, then I started teaching, and I've lectured and taught at over 350 conferences and programs to professionals. That turned into becoming an expert witness in several areas in 6 states under Dauber.
Got it. Okay. Well, it does seem like we hear more and more about violent youth, either
Right,
at school. There's a lot of talk about it at school.
right,
Probably less talk about parents who are experiencing it, but I know as a family law attorney, it's come up in many, many, many cases.
right.
So what are de-escalation strategies that people need to know?
Before we can work with de-escalation strategies, which I'll share several that I use across my entire board, I have to say first that you have to know what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Because in that field, I find so many people looking straight at something. They don't know what they're looking at, either because they're just not aware, or it is such a far reach that they do not believe that it's even fathomable that some of the things that they think they might be feeling can actually be happening.
Like people don't
So,
want to think of their children as dangerous or as criminals.
right,
And we don't know necessarily when is a kid just acting out and has big feelings
right,
versus when we're dealing with somebody abusive.
correct. And there's two kinds. This is fascinating to me too as a criminologist because it really hasn't changed much. When I use the word rage, people will say to me, I don't really see people raging a lot. I see them angry, but I don't see them raging. So we don't need services for rage. But what
Okay.
they don't realize is what they're envisioning is rage as we think of it from explosive behavior.
Yeah.
And we know what that looks like in many different colors, in many different locations. But what we don't think about is the implosion.
Yeah.
And anger and rage can be implosion, and you can be looking right at it. And if you don't know what you're looking for, it's very hard to tell sometimes. But people that are imploding, it's layered. It doesn't, the other thing that happens is it isn't just overnight. It's not day one. Somebody is irritated or wronged or upset, and then the next day they pop. And we see this all the time on the news. People will say, I never saw this coming.
Mm-hmm.
It just happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it never just happens. It's building. Something is building. You may not be aware of it, but something is building. And that's implosion.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about de-escalating strategies, before I can even go in and look at a strategy, I really have to know what I'm going in and dealing with. So it isn't a one fix, okay, try this strategy, it'll work, because that's every child is different, every family's different. And so I have to ascertain what are we coming in and really, what's really the impetus of what we're dealing with, not what it looks like necessarily just on the outside.
Yeah.
And families, excuse me, are often very surprised to know the depth and said, they'll often say, I had no idea, but not
Okay.
because they're not caring, because so many of the families and parents that I've worked with are spectacular people. They just are not aware. They want to be, and they lack attunement because while parents today try so hard, there's so much demand on everything, so much more as the decades have gone on. I'm not really sure there is a way that a parent can stay current on every single thing and understand what pulls at the emotion of a child sometimes that they're like, will often say to me, what? How is it possible that my child is responding to a number? How many numbers of people like them? How many don't? Who's a friend? There's so many topics we talk about because it's so far reaching. And then another thing is a lot of families truly believe it's not them, it's the people over there, the
Mm-hmm.
people across the way, and that nothing like this could happen to them, which of course keeps you from being able to really see.
Mm-hmm. So what are some red flags? What, if parents are listening and they're wondering, my kid's been struggling, how do I know the extent of the issue I have on my hands?
Right. So let me break it down into a few categories. So let's talk for a second, if we could, about parents afraid of their children.
Yeah.
So things that they would look for is the feeling, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm afraid of my child, but they're going to explain it away a lot. And because they don't want it to believe it so. They will, it could look like it's one of the children, and there could be several siblings in the house, but there's one. They're going to feel like, you know, I don't really want to be home. I think when that child is home, I don't want to be home. Or if I'm going to be home, I want to be home with other people in the house. Sometimes they lock their bedroom door at night when they go to sleep for fear. Sometimes they put a piece of furniture in front of the bedroom door of the child they're concerned about. So if that child gets up in the night, they could feel or hear, the child making some noise coming out. Some of them will hide the knives in the kitchen. So there's so many things that are going on that I validate when I come in and I work cases like that. We're validating that what they're seeing. So I'm really letting them tell me, and then I'm asking the right questions and then repeating it back to them. And do you want me to go into the reason why it's so hidden? Would you like me to
Sure.
extrapolate on that? So if you think about it, it's not the normal trajectory of a parent is afraid of their child. So a parent doesn't want to believe it. They don't know what to do. They want to call someone. They don't know who to call. And that's the case on a lot of things that we might be talking about today. They do want to call, they don't know who to call.
Right. Right. No, I know a lot of parents who are like, we've exhausted every
They
resource.
have.
You know,
I get this comment all the
police
time.
have talked to children and they've been kicked out of schools and DCS has been involved, but you have fit
Right.
parents. And so there's nothing that anybody can do to help them.
Right. I get this comment on almost every case. How did we find you? How come we didn't know about you?
Yeah.
And the thing about my work is I'm very quiet. So I don't advertise. How do you advertise for something like this? And it's fascinating. In the hundreds and hundreds of cases I've had, I've never once advertised. It's always by word of mouth. People refer. And a colleague of mine said, you know, the thing about when you know about Magestro is you do one of two things. You either call her as things are escalating, you know it's not going to go well, or it's after the fact and things are falling into the toilet and you're like, okay, help me now. And this is from a well-known police chief. So I work a lot with I'm segueing, but I'm going to get back to why parents are fearful. I work so much with medical, that would be doctors, nurses, therapists, mental health, psychologists. I work with teachers, counselors, principals, a lot of law enforcement, corrections, judges, lawyers. And every time I present, somebody comes up from the audience and they'll say something like, "You're describing me." Or they'll say, "Thank you for being able to give a name or a category or an understanding to something that I'm talking about, or that I'm feeling, and you're talking about, because I just needed to hear somebody say that." So getting back to the parent who's afraid of their child, and there's many other, like I said, many other topics we could talk about, but on that one, a lot of parents are afraid to say anything. Number one, they're professionals and they're extremely worried how that is going to look on their job. Because if that gets out, how come they could not modulate the behavior of the child? Parents are supposed to do that. But now it is so hard because it isn't only parents that raise children. It's such a big circle than that are raising children, not just parents, as in social media. Parents are afraid their child will be judged
Yeah.
at school.
Yeah.
And once it's out that oh my gosh, the people in the home are afraid of the child. The other thing is, it usually is one parent, not both. And it can be the father, not just necessarily the mother.
Mm-hmm.
And so that parent questions, why do I feel this way? And it's not going on with my spouse or the parent of my child. They also feel like they will be judged in the neighborhood, that if the child walks around the neighborhood, people are going to say, stay
Yeah.
away from that child.
Yeah.
And then they're afraid how it's going to affect the other siblings, because then is the friendship group of the other siblings going to be impacted when the community knows that, oh my goodness, the parents are afraid of that child. So these are some reasons about why parents might not say, anything. And so when I talk about tools, the very first thing I go in is figure out what is truly, truly going on. And I do have a really loved tool that I started using 20 years ago, not even realizing what I was creating. And it's called the anger wheel. It is used not only in the cases that I work, it's used in classrooms. It is used by counselors, both private and in school. It's used in autistic communities to help allow emotion to be named and extrapolated on. And one of my most very favorite stories is it's used in prison systems in parts of the country. And because so many children of incarcerated parents are angry and sometimes raging, this allows a parent who's incarcerated to be able to teach their own child to de-escalate. And then the child will take pictures and communicate and send a paper copy of that to the parent, so the parent and them could talk about it. Lots of couples use it. And a very, very cool phone call that I got about 3 months ago was from a teenager across the country who said to me, can I talk to you for a second, Ms. Magestro? And it's always Sue. I love hearing from the young people. And with her family, we sat down and she talked about how huge this anger wheel was as a communication tool, and her and all her friends were using it.
Got it.
So that's
Okay.
the anger wheel.
Um, is it online? I would love to share it with people and talk
So
through it with you.
it I'll hold this up, but it's in my book, Raging
Okay.
from Within.
Okay.
And on my YouTube channel, which has only a few segments on it, but it's gearing up. My very first one, I think it's the 25th or 26th of September, I'm going to be talking about how to use the anger wheel. So if people subscribe to YouTube, you'll get a total tutorial on how to use it. All the templates for all the strategies are in my book, Raging
Okay.
from Within. When I
Okay.
speak, I provide that to the audience when I
Mhm.
do trainings. And then when I work with families, I make that available too.
So what are the emotions that are named on the wheel?
Right. So initially, I don't tell them the emotion. Initially, I want the child to tell me. The most important thing is rapport. Building a relationship right now, everything seems very removed with computer screens, and people aren't always forming relationships. So to sit down with a young person, I use a lot of strategies that have nothing to do with what we're going to talk about. We might drink a hot chocolate just to get it to a conversation place that has absolutely nothing to do with my deep dive. So the short answer on that is you have to develop rapport. Once I get that, I ask them, and then we create, and again, there's samples in here of 5 cases that I summarize, as well as the aftermath of Columbine. Um, and we talk about like what is something that's making you angry, and we just listed in small words. Then we go around, and after we have filled out spokes on the anger wheel of different things that are making them angry, we talk about why. And we do a deep dive. This is not something that I say, in 1 hour, this is over. This is something that sometimes when a child is opening up or a family is opening up, I don't want to cut it. That's why I stay sometimes for hours. And they'll be 2, 3 hours into, we're sitting here, and then I'll go, do you want to take a break for a second? Everybody just takes a minute, because once they start rolling, they don't want to stop
No,
and
right? Because everybody
reconnect in.
wants to feel better.
Right. And that's something as an interventionist I do is I come in and we're going to do the work on the anger wheel. And I keep reforming that wheel in a sense of, okay, what is out of your control? And
Mm.
let's get rid of it. And why is it out of your control? So it's more about my experience as a criminologist to be able to ask the questions of, let's categorize these, and I color code them, and I really do a job of letting the family member or the adolescent or the child answer their own questions. So I know the question to ask, and then I let them answer it. And then I always I repeat back their answer and ask them, what do you think of that? I empower them.
Right. Right.
So, and until we really decide, okay, what's the pivotal issue and how are we going to look at each one? And they help come up with that plan. It's a process that doesn't take very long, but it definitely takes more than an hour. So
Mhm.
I like to come in and teach professionals how to use it. And they're using it all over the country and in countries in Central America. It's really cool.
Mhm.
And then the second tool that I actually developed from a case that I worked on is I started noticing there's patterns. I call this gradations of anger. That's
Okay.
the second tool. And in gradations of anger, it's an exploration of patterns of anger. Because if you really start looking at what sets people off and how
Yeah.
they respond to that anger,
Mhm.
often there's a pattern,
Yeah.
but nobody's aware of the pattern unless we can take different incidences and break it down. This is what happened first, this happened second. And that's what I do is I do a visual with them about maybe 2 or 3 different incidences, and we do a deep dive. And I do it with the child, with the adolescent, and I do it with the adult. Not just one, I do it with both separately. And then we come together and we talk it through. And then the third is a tool that I use as an expert witness and how I break it down. So everybody's communicating on the exact same page. And I can go into that or not. But
When you testify or when you work as an expert witness, is that mostly in criminal cases where juveniles are being charged?
so most of them are family court.
Okay.
So I do a lot of testifying in family court. I've worked I'm going to segue for a minute. Youth remand, um, juvenile waiver, and in different states, a youth is remanded into the adult corrections or judicial system, correction system at different ages, right? So many of the cases that I'm working at with family, there is about to be a crime or there's been something, and we will often, once I'm on something like that, I bring an attorney into the case or two. And so then that will get into criminal law, but mostly it's family law and criminal law mostly.
So I want to ask about family law. You said, usually, I don't know if you said usually or sometimes one parent is afraid and one parent isn't. And
Correct.
this can certainly come up a lot in family law where parents are split up and one
Right.
child might be very, very angry at one parent for ruining the family or whatever. But
Right.
they may be pretty horrible, pretty difficult to live with, and
Yes.
I'm going to say the targeted parent really struggles to know what to do. Should I push
Correct.
for reunification? Do I let my child stay with the other parent? What do I do? So do you have any insight for those people?
I do. The first thing I want to say is the reaction to the child or the teenager has is often it can be misplaced, meaning they don't really understand exactly, what went on behind closed doors. So in their mind, they believe the divorce or the separation was one way, because most parents will not go into a great detail about all the things that are built up for years.
No.
So they don't, and nor should they. But what happens is sometimes the child will be angry, not even knowing why or which parent, but they're going to pick one, and that's the one they're going to go for.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be, let me give you an example of what I mean. Let's say one of the parents in the relationship left.
Mm-hmm.
They may actually be angry at the one that stayed
Really?
because they're going to misplace it. So they're angry, but they're going to display the anger at the one that stayed. And it's very convoluted. That's why I love to do an anger wheel to find out what's really going on there. And a lot of times, in life, for all of us, we take things out on the people we love.
Right.
And sometimes when we don't feel safe to take it out in other ways, we'll take it out on the people in front of us that we love. And so it's really important, I think, for a parent to understand what's really going on with that child. And I believe in all my decades of work with this, that there's good divorce and bad divorce. Divorce, I mean, nobody, really wants to get divorced with children and stir a lot in the family. So it's not first choice.
No.
However, in a good divorce, parents are communicating, and that's what we want to go for. Where the child is not the communicator, it would look something like a bad divorce would look something like this. You tell your mother or you tell your father that I'm going to do this, this, and this. Then that parent responds to the child, and that parent, then the child then goes back to the parent and explains, mommy or dad said this. As that builds, that anger, that implosion builds inside the child. So I think it's really important to have a mature, I'm going to call it a good divorce. I refer to it that way, meaning a mature, let the parents have a conversation and communicate with each other and not use the children in the middle, because when that happens, the child will start escalating. And that is a huge key that I'm going to look for in a case is who's watching out for the child and has communication going in there. And maybe the parent just isn't aware. Maybe they're not aware. And then sometimes the legal situation between the mom and dad themselves gets so contentious,
Yeah.
that they lose sight of what the child's needs are. And we need to just push that up a little bit into a more, to more tranquil, calmer waters, where the child can be the most important part of the divorce, and that'll calm everything down. And that's the difference in what I see with a good divorce, bad divorce. The other thing is, in this day and age, not just in divorce, in everything, there's a lot of trauma out there. And there's a lot of not just young people, but all people responding with a lot of trauma. And they respond differently to trauma because trauma now has many different hats. Examples would be post-COVID, my parent is now unable to function the way they did before. And the house feels different. Or my parent lost their job. Parents, the family's intact. One parent lost their job. It was a major breadwinner in the family. There's no income coming in right now. The kid is holding the stress and the trauma on that, depending how the parent, responds to that and how much communication they're having with the child. These are the kinds of things I get out in the anger wheel.
Yeah.
Or things like I talk about, if I can jump for a second into like truncated grief. It's a term I've coined to mean a grief that doesn't close. And that might mean there's mental health issues in the family, and the child and the other family members are unclear how to navigate that trauma, how to close the relationship or to modulate the relationship to a place where it can be calm. So when we were talking about, divorce and strategies, a lot of the strategies are the same for divorce and trauma and many things, but the communication and the rapport is the number one thing to come in there and figure out what's really going on. Because if it goes for too long unaddressed, the implosion gets to a point that one of two things is going to happen. They're either going to identify, they want to, of course, feel better because they feel awful, and anger is cumulative. So they're going to align with another way to figure out how not to soothe themselves, but to do something with this. Or they are going to, they'll either align it with like on a social media, or they'll align with groups, or they with friends, or they're looking for empowerment. So all of the kids are looking for a way to feel like they have control over their lives, like they have some empowerment. And so it's very important that when I work with them, we start giving you back control. It's because when you feel like you lose control of many things at the same time is when you feel like you're going to spiral.
Okay, so I want to go back to the example of the divorced family and the child. Let's pretend the child is saying, I don't want to see mom. I'm angry at mom. I don't want to see mom. Should mom give the child the control to say, okay, you don't have to follow this court-ordered parenting plan. We're going to go to counseling together? Or like, what should mom do?
I would want to know mom, and I would want to know the child, and I would want to really give the child a voice for a minute. And it takes a minute, not long, but it's amazing how people will open up to me because they want to talk. And I would want to know why. I would want to know why that child doesn't, not just so black and white. I don't want to, and I don't want to follow a court order. I think that child is screaming out for, let me tell somebody something. And, it's like we talked about at the beginning of this podcast too. What I like to be able to do with a child is it takes me a minute to get them talking. Almost always, not always, but almost always I can get them talking the first time. Not every detail, but I can get them going. It takes a minute to build rapport, and I'm not going to say, okay, see you next week. But what I am going to say is once I've got it open and we create something, I'm referring it out to a therapist, to a counselor. I'm going to get it level, because once that child does start talking, they do not want to stop. And that is something that people will often say, what's the difference? Is I say, I'm so fortunate that there's wonderful therapists and counselors in there. I'm just going to open the door to get them over there.
Well, that
And
is
I
the
would want to know.
goal of reunification therapy. Exactly what you're
Right.
saying is the goal,
Right.
that you give the child a voice and then you work through those issues and then you move back towards reunification. It certainly doesn't always work. What's your opinion on reunification therapy?
I actually, I'm going to turn around and grab this for a second. I actually wrote a book on reunification, and this was reunification of incarcerated parents with their children.
Okay.
Now, all the time people say to me, I don't really know anybody, any child who's had a parent that's been incarcerated. But I'm telling you, almost every one of us knows someone who has been on probation, parole, incarcerated. Something it could be misdemeanor on, or it can be mild as a juvenile or as an adult. But the thing is, we don't talk about it. So reunification takes communication. And I believe very strongly that reunification, be it with an incarcerated parent to their child, needs to be talked about, because the two sides are absolutely not on the same page.
Yeah.
And there's always more that both sides don't know. And just for an example on a stat, there's 8 to 10 million children, in the United States right now who has a parent or a sibling or a grandparent or cousin who's been in any of those incarcerated situations that I have just told you about, but nobody talks about it. To link that, when we talk about, fear of everybody finding out, exploration of reunification needs to be important in something like this and in other, because if you do not get that out, here's what you do. You live with a secret.
Hmm.
And it's very hard to grow up always living with a secret inside of you that's always building, building, building. Examples would be, if you have a parent who has had any problem with the law, let's say, again, those are not parents from over there. They're all walks of life, all socioeconomic levels, all professions. I've worked with many professionals who have parents, exes, such, who have been incarcerated. So reunification is really important, because it allows people to explore, same like the anger wheel. What's my anger? What's causing this? Why don't I want to reunify? And it's all about empowering that child to say, I don't want to reunify with you because of this. Or another example of reunification. Now, this is for children of an incarcerated parent. They are going on, let's just say, to a profession where they're going to have a background check. Do I say anything? Do I not say anything? If I'm going to date somebody, and this is also for a parent who's fearful, let's say, of a child. If I'm single and I'm going to date somebody, do I tell them I have fear? Do I tell them I have an incarcerated ex? There's a lot of questions that reunification discussions can bring up that are important for people who are wanting to move forward on the trajectory of their lives, and they're not really sure how to walk it. So I believe strongly in that, in many walks of life.
Okay. So, and reunification therapy for family law, you think?
Absolutely. For empowerment,
Mhm.
control, communication, um, so that the end result is always, let's do what's best for the child and the family, all the family. And the very best is not to have the constant bickering and anger, but to have what I call good divorce, or a good situation of tranquility or better communication, because everyone will have a better life if you can do that.
Right, right. Do you have any ideas or perspectives on parenting plans? Some people feel very strongly that 50-50 is no good because the kids have no home, no stability. And other people feel very strongly that 50-50 is the best because then you have both of your parents. Do
Right.
you have any thoughts or opinions on that?
First of all, I think it depends, of course, on the situation. Let me give you an example. If you have a child with needs, some really special needs, that is very challenging for a child. In a good situation, it's challenging. But
Mm-hmm.
with a child with special needs, it makes a lot more sense to keep continuity with the child, for the parent to come in and keep the child's constant, so they can thrive in whatever their challenge is. So
Uh-huh.
some creativity in the planning. I
Uh-huh.
don't think an absolute um, exact percent
Uh-huh.
is necessarily going to work for every single situation. But I think that creativity needs to be explored in a situation. So when I'm brought into various cases, we're going to take a look at what's the dynamic within that family. What is best for that child? And to have it presented as what's best for the child, what's best for the family, Let me give you another example. Family dog. Kids love dogs. Rather than have a dog, just be creative, go 50-50. Let that dog go with that child. I have a trauma crisis dog here I bring in with children sometimes on my cases. And there's so many, I call them considerations. And when I'm brought on by a law firm or with a family, I try really hard to take a look at what is going to be the most empowering situation for the child, because then the child will have the most success, the family will have the most success, and then it won't be a constant struggle going round and round. And by that, I'm looking at not just the dynamic in the home, but the dynamic in how that child is at school, how that child is in friendship groups, and then how vulnerable is that child online. Because I really don't want that. I want this child, or all the children in the family, to be confident and secure and build themselves. And when a family's in trauma, sometimes that is very hard to do because everybody's just trying to tread water.
Right.
But if we can keep this young person and the family in the calmest, most positive way, given the situation, well, then we're going to build a strong child, a bit strong children, siblings, family. And that also applies to extended family. Let's try to keep this as positive and empowering so this kid and the family can have a good life. Then everybody can get along and move on.
Do you have any thoughts, or could you discuss sibling relationships for a moment, both in blended family situations
Right.
and even with biological siblings? Can you talk about that? Because sometimes there's so much conflict between siblings and parents don't know what to do.
Right. And, I want to be really clear too, when I talk about my background, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I refer to them. So if I were to get to something where I've gotten the door open, so to speak, I might refer that to a psychologist who's working with the family to kind of work long term on that. Because while I know where I fit as an interventionist, we may need and often do long term conversations. We all know that blended families are challenging for the kids, challenging for the adults, it's challenging for the grandparents, it's challenging for everybody. So again, when I'm in there, I'm looking at some positivity, and I'm always looking for communication because it is really a challenge to do that. So once I know the dynamic, and I'm always looking for that dynamic on what's going in. I've had the luxury in my work, in my cases, they don't come to me, I can come to them. And I do that. So I'm able to walk in the house and see what's going on, and you can feel it. Examples would be a parent might say, it's a calm house, it's a great house, this is what's going on. And you walk in and you immediately see that there's a lot of tension going on. So that will tell me, okay, we really in reality have tension. And one of two things, either we don't realize it, we're getting caught up. And so it's very important for me to go into the house. The other thing is I'd like to, as this develops as an intervention, as we're getting ready to segue this off to family counseling or wherever we're going to go, individual counseling. Also, school. Are the child's grades staying up? The child, still going to school? And I'm trying to look for positive of ways to connect them, because there's already coming in, it's not as typical for people to just come in together in a blended family and have kumbaya. It just doesn't usually work that way. So we're going to try to build that. And most families, I'm so real on how when I come in, I can feel the pulse of the reality of families, that we can have honest conversations about here's where you are, here's where you want to go, how are we going to get there? And I've been very fortunate because I can bring in wonderful people, and do bring in wonderful people to work alongside of me. So I'm not a one-woman show. So in situations like that, figure out what I need and then bring in others.
Susan, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's such a fascinating topic. And you're here in the Phoenix area?
I am. I work all over the United States. So all of my cases have taken me to just about every state in the country and into Central America. And then I also train, like I said, professionals. And I'm putting these trainings, they're loaded onto my YouTube channel as well.
Wonderful. Well, we'll make sure that people know how to contact you. You are available for lawyers as an expert witness in family
Right.
court or in criminal court, and you're available to families as an interventionist if they're really struggling. Is that right?
Yes, and I'm also available to law firms who are just feeling like, we can't get at the impetus on how to go in this. So law firms actually bring me in too, a lot of times to figure out, okay, we're stuck on this one, where are we going to go? And then I'll work with the family and we figure something out, because there's a little bit of being stuck. And so law firms bring me in quite frequently as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Susan. It's been a great time, and we'll have you back soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Modern Arizona podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, make sure to download it, like it, leave a review, and share it with your friends. If you know someone who would be a good guest, or you would like to be on the Modern Arizona podcast, make sure to give us an email or reach out to us at mymodernlaw.com.